Suzanne and I actually go back. I've known her for over a decade. I had the pleasure of meeting her in a crop circle a number of years ago, and we've become good friends. And I asked for the privilege of being able to introduce Suzanne, and I'm helping to host her and take care of her while she's here. Let me tell you a little bit about her background before we bring her up to the floor. Suzanne was involved with film since she graduated Pi Beta Kappa and summa cum laude from New York University. She's been an actress, and she crossed over to the other side of the camera as the executive producer of the feature documentary film Crop Circles: Quest for Truth. Some of you may have known about that film or saw it. It was produced about a decade ago. Her new film, What on Earth? Inside the Crop Circle Mystery, won an award for the Best Feature Documentary at the UFO Conference Film Festival, and Crop Circle's Quest for Truth got the Audience Award in 2003 at that festival. What on Earth got an award for excellence in paranormal filmmaking from the 2010 Paranormal Symposium and the Film Festival. Suzanne is a Crop Circle authority and for the History Channel series known as Ancient Astronauts. I'm sorry, thank you, Ancient Aliens, thank you. As the founder of Mighty Companions, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to consciousness expansion, she coordinates this out of her Los Angeles home, which serves for a gathering place of many forward-thinking activists. She's a fine arts post-impressionist painter. Suzanne has had several one-woman shows. She is an accomplished chef and also the author of a book called The Anybody Can Make It and Everyone Will Love It cookbook. She writes a blog currently today called Making Sense of These Times at the conversation.org website, where posts about progressive ideas include considerations of how consciousness might evolve and how consciousness could be involved in the crop circle phenomenon. I'd like to invite you with me to bring a warm welcome to Suzanne Taylor.
Well, hi. That sounded good, didn't it? Wait a minute, I gotta get my water. So thank you for having me here. I think I'm here because of the title of my film. Mark Passio has this What on Earth is Happening? And so he must have thought that I belonged here because he's involved with organizing this. But I am your ray of sunshine at the end of a really hard day. So listen, I have, I have a lot on my shoulders here, but the film will lift you up, I promise you. It's very promising. So I want to make some comments, so I have time to talk before the film, and I'll tell you how the film came about, and I'll also tell you, in my context, how I see some of the things that we've been talking about. This mind control thing, Alfred and I go way back. He used to be one of the illustrious progressive people in my living room when he lived in Los Angeles. So we have a second phase of our friendship here as we run into each other at all these sort of events. Now, mind control. What are we trying to control? We're trying to control people to do what? And also, if we're mind controlling by things in the air, how are the people who are controlling us not breathing that also and forgetting everything and having all these difficulties? There's pieces of this that are questionable. We talk about the Illuminati, we talk about 2,000 people or 10% of the people, however many it is, that are controlling the world. Well, I think about that and I think, you know, maybe, we don't know, it's not us, but do we really need that to be in the real difficulty we're in? Is that the explanation that is essential to account for our situation? Our situation is terrible. I mean, we don't have any argument about that. You know, it used to be, because I see the crop circles as a doorway to a bigger reality, very positive reality. And I've been into this phenomenon for 20 years. And it used to be when I would entertain that idea or suggest that idea, well, people were so complacent and we didn't need to be somewhere else. Everything was okay. But now, the reception, at least, the atmosphere, at least, is quite different because we all know we're in trouble now. I don't have to, enumerate a list of all the ways in which this world is falling apart and the human race is in some jeopardy of being destroyed. This has never happened before, at least in recorded history as we know it. Who knows about other cycles? But do we need this explanation of the powerful trilateral commissions and Illuminatis and what have you that are doing this to us? Well, this is what I think about. Or the corporations even. Well, what are the corporations? They're us. We all have 401ks. Are we all going to kill the system? Well, we're going to kill ourselves if we kill the system at that level of destruction that at some level immediately we respond to. Yeah, the bad guys. We're going to get the bad guys. Except it's a one world now, and we're all in it. We're all of it. Not that we would have made it this way, not that, the most enlightened people would have created the military-industrial complex, but we've got it, and it is us. People call it the government. Well, that's a lot of people like us who have jobs, So the issue really is, how are we going to handle this whole thing? So in some ways, it doesn't really matter whether it's the powers that be that are controlling us. But of course, if everything falls apart, they fall apart too. They lose their money, they lose their power. If the world falls apart, but again, does it really matter what particular causal factor there is in how bad things are? Really, the question is, how could they get better? Regardless of what's making them bad, how could they get better? And this is where my crop circles, why I'm so interested in the crop circles. So let me just tell you how I got into this and what the sort of platform is from which you'll be seeing the movie. I was a strange, unusual child in my world because of where my parents parked me. And I was in a very loving family. I'm an only child. My parents doted on me. We were threesome. We did everything together. But we were the only Jewish family in a Gentile world. I was the only Jewish child in school. Now, I'll say a couple things about that. I don't know the first thing really about being Jewish. We had no religion in my family. We didn't practice anything. I know very little about anything. Holidays come, people say, oh, it's the such and... I said, oh, it is? Oh, okay. But when you were Jewish, when I went to school, you were the wrong thing. It was a very bad thing to be Jewish, and with Gentile people. And every day I would go to school, and I was wrong. And, I'm a little kid. That's from kindergarten. This made no sense. I'm alien in my world for something that made absolutely no sense to me. So I really started in this kind of alienated position of not being a part of things and observing and wondering what's wrong with the world. They couldn't really totally marginalize me because I was the head of everything. She said I'm Phi Beta Kappa Summa Cum Laude. That means you get 100 on everything. I was good at everything. And in fact, when I graduated from high school, they were worried about me, that I was good at so many things that I would never know what to do with myself. And in some ways, they were right. I envy ice skaters or brain surgeons or people who really learned something that they really can do well because they devoted themselves to it. I'm sort of this generalist looking at the world going, oh my gosh, what am I going to do about this world? Except that was the second phase of my life, because the first phase of my life, I did what I was really supposed to do. I got married, and I got married before women's lib. I was not supposed to be anything but a housewife. In fact, I needed a job when I got out of college because we needed the income. And I was going around looking for, here I have the highest marks you could have in school, and I couldn't get a job because I didn't take shorthand. They told me to go to secretarial school. You know, you people who are younger, you have no idea what it was like to be a woman, or you maybe have heard it, but I'm telling you firsthand, it was so different. You did not expect to have a career. You did not expect to work. Well, some women did, but that was because they couldn't find husbands. You know, if we found our husband, that was it. That was what we did. It never made me very comfortable. I did it. I have 3 children. My husband was very successful, by the way. I met him in college, and he is still with us, not my husband, but he was the head writer of the Dick Van Dyke Show. He created Marlo Thomas's show, That Girl. He was the executive producer. He wrote many specials for many of your big stars. And, you know, we had a very comfortable, in fact, when I didn't like being married to him, it was very somewhat distressing to me thinking the life I was going to leave. It was true. It was very Hollywood, you know, it was quite nice. But it wasn't so nice being married to him for the reasons why we all don't like our husbands. However, the one thing, he didn't want me to work. He wanted me to stay home with the children. I was a drama major in college. All I ever wanted to be was an actress. I thought everything else looked boring. And when I got out, when we, you know, there I was married, how could I be on Broadway? I would have to be out all the time. Or how could I even be in a television series? Couldn't do that. What I could do was commercials. I made a lot of commercials because they only took a day, and I sometimes took the babies in the bassinet, the little one, and took them on the auditions with me. And I was very, very successful making commercials. It wasn't my dream, but you know, that is what I was able to do. But as an actress, you really are learning about the kinds of things that we now learn in therapy or in the human potential movement, in all the self-help kind of things. You learn to look inside yourself. Who's the deeper person? What's really going on? Who are you behind this surface facade that you have adopted, that you meet the world with? And we have a vast kind of array now of all these different kinds of ways ever since the 60s. You know, the 60s was the start of introspection, self-awareness, Esalen, hot tubs, you know, all of the interesting ways in which we were exploring ourselves. When that came along, when human potential came along, I looked at it and I thought, they should all go to acting class instead of therapy. It's a lot more interesting because really it was sort of the same thing. So when I got unmarried, which was a long time ago, now I was free, although, you know, tied to my children still, but free of, you know, the restraints of my husband. And I started looking around for how could I serve the world. I didn't need to make a salary anymore, thanks to I had been working relatively small amount of income compared to my husband's that I got half of. So I was able not to do a 9-to-5 job, and I was able to just look around for, you know, what kind of life was I going to lead, and how, having been now steeped in the beginnings of the human potential movement before I got unmarried and the introspection of my acting, I thought, you know, boy, the world, it really does need, people need a different picture from the one I was in earlier that I was learning about and thinking, that's what the world needs awareness. The world needs to know that this is not the really limited place of facades and what have you, that we were in that Ozzie and Harriet days. And so I started to look around for what could I do to serve my world. And so I started getting involved with all of these interesting people who would come through LA. You know, LA being a crossroads, everybody comes through eventually. And I was on the it's just water. Okay. So I was on the list for agents, book agents and what have you. They'd call me up, so-and-so's going to be in town, would you host them? And I hosted many things. I was like the little underground of consciousness in Los Angeles, and if people were on my guest list, they were very happy. Were you happy, Alfred? Alfred was very happy, right? All the people on my list were happy. And we did fascinating things. I mean, there were just not only individual people who came by, we took on projects. We took on, we would have teams of people doing perpetrations on Los Angeles of these fascinating sorts of projects that we would do, all about bringing this kind of new information and new feeling and new awareness to Los Angeles. And as I was doing all these kinds of things, the crop circles came along as a subject. I just happened to see some pictures of them when a friend of mine had a son who was stationed in the military in England, and he would go out on his leave and he would take pictures of what they called landing pads for UFOs. And I saw and they said, you know, they were not being made by us, these shapes in the ground. And I saw the pictures and I thought, wow, that would affect people mightily if we actually were being visited. That would change people's minds about things. So I became a spot in LA for producing programs with these various crop circle researchers that would come into town. We had a couple of them living in LA, and then others would come into town. These programs were so popular. This was the late 80s and 1990. I had to rent big halls out, you know, in the city because these programs were so popular. The world was fascinated by this stuff. What was it? Where could it be coming from? There was no explanation for it. And I mean, if you forget all of the disinformation you've been told about them, and you just were in a kind of innocent world, and you said, what are those things that are, oh my gosh, where do they come from? And they can't explain them? And you'd be fascinated, as people were. So we had very, very popular programs about the subject, and eventually I said, okay, I got to go see them for myself. And I joined a little tour group in 1993. That was my first trip to England, and I got hooked. They were just so incredibly fascinating and impossible to explain, and there's something so lovely over there, which you'll get a flavor for in the film. It's just very magical. And so after a couple of years of visiting in the summer and, you know, continuing to kind of be a bit of a soapbox for them, I thought, well, I came back, I remember, in 1996, and I said, okay, I'm making a vow. If I'm going to do anything with my life that's different or that matters or that's what other people aren't doing, I'm going to tell the world about crop circles. And how do you tell the world about anything? You make movies. So I already had a little familiarity with the movie biz. It wasn't totally unfamiliar to me, although I'd never produced anything. And I started looking around for a filmmaker. You can't just go up to any filmmaker and say, can I hire you to make a film about crop circles? Huh? So I had to find somebody who was interested, who knew something about the subject matter. And it took a long time, actually. But finally, after a couple of years, I was told there was this filmmaker who had been to England in 2000 with his girlfriend, who was a crop circle researcher. And he got stoked. He wanted to make a film about crop circles. And he had an Academy Award nomination for a documentary that he had produced. Did you people see Waco, the Rules of Engagement, about Branch Davidian in Texas that burned down by the government? No? We don't know this documentary? Before Michael Moore and all of the Penguins and, you know, all of those monster documentary things, it was the 5th largest grossing documentary ever. It was a very, very popular documentary. And he wanted to make a film about crop circles. I thought, all right. So we spent a year kind of raising money and contemplating and figuring out what to do. And in 2001, I spent 10 weeks in England supervising the shoot. I knew more about the subject than he did, so I would tell him where to go, who to talk to. I was kind of running the job. And watching him and watching, filmmaking's not the way it used to be when the studios were the ones making movies. And now, anybody with a little video camera can make a movie, which is both good because anybody can make a movie and bad because we get a lot of bad movies that way. But, I saw, I could do that. I could supervise such a thing. This is a human endeavor. And so when the film came out in 2002, he actually didn't make the film he was supposed to make. He made the film he wanted to make. It wasn't the film I wanted him to make. And we did not evolve peacefully. We evolved in court, actually. Yes. I shouldn't really say terrible things because people really like that movie. It's called Crop Circle's Quest for Truth, and it's a kind of a history of the crop circle phenomenon. It's somewhat of a Talking Heads documentary. And I wanted to make the passion of the crop circles. Why have people, really reputable people, given up their lives, given up their careers, and become crop circle researchers? What is, what's going on? Why would rational, intelligent people do such a thing? And these are very colorful people. Like in Close Encounters, I've got to get there. Well, this is kind of like these people. People left their husbands, left their jobs, and became crop circle researchers. So in England, every summer, from all over the world, this little community of people descend, because England is the hotbed. England is the place where the study and the research and the focus is on the phenomenon. And they come from all over the world and spend, various times during the summer. We all know each other. They're the people who write the books, who do the lectures, who take the pictures. And I'm the person who tells the world. So, I'm sort of the primary front person. Certainly nobody else making movies as the kind of in the kind of Hollywood style that my movies are. There are a lot of videos and there are a lot of other film products, but I'm making your Hollywood movies, so to speak. And so this has kind of become my thing, although we still do other things. And if you're in Los Angeles, you want to know me. You want to be on my mailing list, no matter what. How many people here are already on my mailing list? Yeah. Would you say yay, how interesting it is, the things I send out? I don't know. I have an eye for what's really interesting in the world about all these subjects, and all about how they can change the world, how we can change consciousness, how we can be different. So I don't, it's not a heavy duty, once every 2 weeks or so you'll get a little compilation of what I put on my blog. And people love being on my mailing list, and you can sign up for it downstairs. Now, also, so what about these crop circles? Well, first of all, you see a lot of it in the film. I don't want to, tell you the things that the film is going to tell you. But let me just go into kind of the essence of it here. All of these kind of techniques for self-awareness, meditation, all these wonderful ways we have of expanding our own personal awareness, the things that therapize us, the things that get us past our childhood trauma, all of those things, they will go on. They have to go on. It's the track of individual awakening. But how do we create a collective awakening whereby we can be a force that can combat, I don't quite like that word, we can surround the Illuminati, the 10%, the mind control, the whatever. How can you change the world? A world really where all of us are needing a lot of it to be the way it is. We can't destroy it, really. We have to do something different. We have to be more intelligent about how we engage collectively. Now, how do we engage collectively? We have a worldview. It's the worldview that has to change. Because once the worldview changes, all of us have changed something that we are now in a different idea about. So our worldview now is primarily based on economics. It's making money. That's the goal. Well, as long as that's your primary goal, the rich will get richer, the poor will get poorer, you will tear the world apart more and more. It has to work that way. The corporations exist to satisfy the stockholders. They have no choice. That's their mandate. And as long as we're all agreeing, not because fundamentally we would agree, but because we're stuck agreeing, we really can't topple it. It will topple all of us. We have to get smarter than that. We have to, and it's the collective will that has to come into play that sees things differently. Now, how would we see things differently that would be good for us? We have to move from individual self-interest, which we'll always have. I mean, we're not going to lay down and not be interested in our own well-being, but we have to also see that the well-being of everybody is a more important focus, and it's the focus that will take care of the well-being of ourselves. We'll continue, of course, you know, we're not going to have socialism, we're not going to have everybody, communism, whatever, everybody equal, the rich give it all up, they come in. No, rich people will still be richer than poor people, but we have to create a world where everybody survives, where everybody's okay enough so that we don't have Al-Qaeda. You know, how you can't fight it. We made a war against Al-Qaeda. I mean, it's insane. I mean, we all know that. We don't have any collective force that we can defeat. It's everywhere. It pops up, and it pops up because there's so much dissatisfaction. And there's so much dissatisfaction because people are not surviving well, because we don't care about that. We don't care about the world being in good shape. We are adhering to more, you might say, selfish goals, but it's not really our fault. It's the fault of this stampeding materialism and capitalism that has to work that way. You know, if you were going to be at the beginning of it, you'd see, where's it going to go? Well, it's going to go where people are more and more intent on making money, more and more splitting the world apart. It has to go that way as long as that's our worldview. But if we have a different worldview, and all of us hold a different worldview, I mean, what if the goal weren't for the wealthy people, whoever has the most toys wins, but whoever does the most good wins? You know, we could have advertising campaigns like that. We could just turn the whole kind of principles on which we live into, you might say, instead of an economic goal, of a kind of a spiritual goal, a kind of an inner life kind of goal, rather than an exterior kind of goal. So that's where the crop circles come in my point of view. There's, you know, who knows what can happen, what will happen, but I have just burned with this desire to change the world. You know, it got in me really early, and the question's always been, well, how am I going to do that? And so as I got involved with the circles, I thought, aha, if we are, now this would go for the UFO phenomenon as well, but that's harder to prove. You know, you don't have the evidence in hand that you can take into laboratories. You don't have something that you can visit and examine and you can participate in. You're listening to third-hand accounts, which, thank God, we have those. You know, more and more, you'll see in my film, we make some reference to this quickening that's going on, where even like Larry King's show would have these panels of UFO people where 5 years ago, he wouldn't have done that, you know. More and more people of prominence and people from government, people from the military who have cachet, who we believe are coming forward, and things that were classified are unclassified now, and we're learning about the credibility of a lot of the UFO stuff. But despite that, the crop circles became my thing. I never was really a UFO person. I just never went down that track. But as I became, I've learned a lot because the UFO people like me. They consider the crop circles to be unidentified flying objects, whatever. We never see craft, by the way, but they include, I'm very grateful for that because it gives me a chance to speak, it gives me a chance to get awards. You should see this little award that I have, by the way. This award I got from the UFO Congress, which is the major UFO event of the year, and they gave me Best Feature Documentary. It looks like an Oscar. It's just shaped exactly like an Oscar, but it's an alien. And he has a little camera on his shoulder. When I'm in LA, I take it with me, but it's heavy, you know, it's like an Oscar, so I don't carry it on the road. So, anyway, where was I? Okay, I was talking about UFO people like me, okay. But I glommed onto the circles because, you know, they landed in my lap, I learned about them, I thought, oh, this is something that's much more provable, much more tangible, and I got a tool now that I can really get behind, I can stand on a soapbox about, I can talk about, you know, I can have a way to satisfy this passion of mine to try to do something to change the world. So just picture, and again, as I say, it would be the same if it happened through UFOs, but we're talking crop circles now. So just picture, you wake up in the morning, and the headline all over the world, contact. And again, if you examine the evidence, and you'll see this in the film, you would come to that conclusion. We can't make them, hoaxers aside. Whew, we can't make them. That means something else is making them. That means we're not the only intelligence in the universe. So if we weren't the only intelligence, that means that there is another outside of ourselves. The last time our relationship to the universe changed was Galileo and Copernicus before him. That took Earth out of the center of the universe, and we became part of a much larger system. It wasn't revolving around us. In fact, we were revolving around the sun, and there were other planets, and you know, it was a larger system. We were no longer the dominant force. And you know, we went from kings and serfs, a domination kind of model, to things like democracy and modern science that came out of that whole different perspective on the world. Well, this would be the next different perspective for all of humanity. This would be the perspective in which we're no longer the big cheese as the only intelligence around, even though in science fiction, of course, you know, we love our science fiction, but this kind of turns science fiction into science fact. And if we really realize, we wake up in the morning, contact is in headlines, there is other intelligence out there, and it is contacting us, it is sending us communications. Whoa, this is not today's news that goes away tomorrow. This never goes away. All of a sudden, we are one humanity, as we are not now. We're all these separate little people now, fighting for our material goods. But now we're one humanity in relation to the other. I mean, we've never had anything to relate to before in a field of intelligence. So now we have something to relate to that pulls us into one, and it creates one conversation on Earth. What is it? What do we do about it? And everybody's in that conversation. I mean, you know, one show every once in a while on Larry King turns into every show all the time, all over. It's the big deal. So as I say, whoever's forcing us, whoever's mind controlling us, whoever's doing what to us, this kind of transcends all of that and takes us and gives us something that really we can progress with, and we don't have to go to war against anybody. We don't have to fight anything. You know, even in ways that we deal with these Illuminati mind control things, we're kind of fighting against them, which is the way in the dualistic world we live in that we do things. We oppose things. The good opposes the bad. Well, there's no opposing here in this crop circle thing. We're in a very positive kind of energy, all of us together. And so, you know, that is my total fascination with them. Now, I want to say about this movie. You are not going to see the whole movie. The whole movie is 1 hour and 20 minutes. And we have edited a 52-minute version, which is what you use for Our TV. We haven't got it on Our TV yet, but it is in the cards. A lot of good things are happening to it now, including this week in New York, where it's opening April 22nd at one of the best art houses in Manhattan. And we're going to get reviewed by the New York Times, which is the first time ever that a Crop Circle film will have a New York Times review. It's going to raise our stature so that people will pay attention to the phenomenon. And I've also, up to this point, the only way you could see this movie was at an event like this where I show up, or you would buy the DVD. And now I have contracts to get it into bookstores, to get it on demand, not on demand, but pay-per-view. All of that is going to kick into place. We're moving into the next phase. I'll just tell you why we did what we did. I'll take you a little bit into the world of independent filmmaking. It's a very different world now, and it changes all the time thanks to the internet. Partly thanks to the internet, thanks to the technology of cameras and what have you, but thanks to the internet now, in terms of getting a film out there, you have to make a decision of how are you going to get your film out. Well, one of the things you can do is get on the festival circuit, where it's Sundance and, you know, all those things you've heard about. It takes a long time and a lot of money. You have to have a huge budget for distribution. And that field is drying up. It used to be that films would get picked up by the studios, by the majors, whatever, to distribute at these festivals. A minuscule amount of them get picked up. So you spend a lot of money, you get a lot of awards, and your film doesn't get seen. I wanted this film seen. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on a festival circuit and take the chance that it wouldn't even get anywhere that way. I wanted to get it out. Now, the internet, you maybe don't know this, but the UFO audience is the second largest niche group on the internet. Did you all know that? Yeah? So, you know what the first largest group is? Porn, sex, right? But with that large potential audience, we decided to release it on the internet. As my mentor for marketing says, first we pick the low-hanging fruit. And the good part about that is that it's retail. It comes to me. You know, when you wholesale the film and you get it out into the stores and what have you, you get a little amount. You plan on selling a lot and you get a little amount. But I needed more money to get it into the larger distribution. So the way I could get that was to release to my large niche audience on the internet in a very carefully crafted campaign. It's not like just I put it out there. There's a lot of technology. I mean, it's really funny. We have all these Facebook and all these wonderful ways in which we can talk to one another, and of course everybody is gaming the system where how can we sell things to the people, whatever. I feel a little funny about that, but you know, it's the world, so I'm still part of it. And but then I have a wonderful product, so I feel okay about having done that. Well, we've been very successful on the internet. I've sold a lot of DVDs, and we're still there. We've still got our website, and we're still selling through the website. You can buy my DVD here. I want to encourage you to do that, by the way, because you're going to see the 52-minute version of an hour and 21-minute film. It also has an hour of bonus material on it. I like the bonus material as much as I like the movie. So if you like the crop circles and you're interested in them, you'll like the bonus material as well. And it's cheaper here than you'll find it on the internet, so much for my pitch for it. But I thought if I have time, I'll tell you what's left out. Yeah. What we left out of this, first of all, you have to kind of carefully re-edit when you cut something down. It isn't just chop it up. It changes things. So you never know it, though. When you see the 52-minute one, you won't know that it's a shortened version. But what we took out was some kind of stories. People had stories to tell, and we took out those stories. So I'll just tell you a couple of the stories that we took out. So one of the stories we took out was... Now, this is not an ordinary event. And in fact, there were some things that happened in crop circles that are so astonishing, unbelievable, that I was concerned about putting them in because they sounded hokey, you know. Except my criteria for doing that was that because I'm part of that community, I speak at conferences over there, everybody knows who I am. And I used the stories that the people who were the other crop circle crappies, we call ourselves, were involved in. They were their stories. I was there, I did this, I did that. So I know they're true stories. They're not third hand to me. They're third hand to you, or second hand to you, but they were first hand to me. So those are the stories I included with a wing and a prayer, because listen to how unbelievable this sounds. So one of the main crop circle people was involved and tells the story in what you won't see, of a woman came to the circles with her husband. She was in a wheelchair. She had been in a wheelchair for a long time. She hadn't walked for a long time. He carried her, along with a couple of other people, in the wheelchair to the crop circle. In the crop circle, she got out of the wheelchair. He says she was running around. I didn't say that even in the longer version. I just said she got out and walked. It just was so unreal. And he said he carried the wheelchair back, and she walked back. So you won't see that story. Another story you won't see. Oh, by the way, when you see the credits, I love my credits. Don't turn the film off when the credits are on. We really worked on the credits. You see the harvest behind the credits, and I just like what we did with the credits. But you'll see some people in the credits say, "Well, I didn't see them in the movie," or "I just saw their face in the movie." Well, those are the people whose stories we cut out. So here's another story that we cut out. One of my friends, Denny, is terrified to speak in public. But when the first time she walked into a crop circle, quote unquote, "I have to be a messenger for the crop circles. Uh-oh, I'm scared to talk in public." So she lived at the time in Santa Cruz, and she was invited to speak an hour away from her house. And she accepted the engagement. Terrified, she went to speak. And, she did fine, or whatever she did, she spoke. She got back to her house, and there was a crop circle in her hay, right out her kitchen window. And I say to her in the thing, "Well, did the public find out about it?" She said, "The public? I live in the country. There's no public. That was for me." Well, there's something going on between the crop circle makers, whoever they may be, and us, where they deliver that way to us. You're driving along in a car, and somebody will say, in cars I have been in, "Oh, look at that little elevated hill. That would be a perfect place. We've never had a circle over there." The next day, there's a circle there. Is something going on? There's a communication going on. Happens. Another story we left out is the guy who had his mother come into the crop circle, and he's a scientist. And his mother came into the crop circle, and she was trying to make a cell phone call. And he took the phone, it didn't work, and she's so technologically inept. This was early on in the phenomenon. And he took the phone away from her, it didn't work. And he went all around the perimeter of the circle, and he would hold the phone out over the crop that was still growing, it would work. He'd pull it back in, it wouldn't work. He went around the whole crop circle that way, so that's another story. And then another thing you won't see, and there's not a story so much, but we cut out a sequence about the geometry. You'll see that one of the really most outstanding characteristics of crop circles is this extraordinary geometry. And it used to be that we could tell the hoaxers from the real ones because the geometry was so terrible, but then they've gotten good geometers that they work with, so it's no longer a test. But we took out a sequence about the geometry where we showed you how you start with a simple circle, and there's a wonderful website that does this. It would blow your mind to be on it. I always forget if it's Zeph Damon or Zev Damon. Z-E-F Damon is the guy's name, if you would remember that and Google it. It would just blow your mind to see his analysis geometrically, step by step by step. You start with a circle, you put your point down, you put your compass down, you make another one, you make a straight line, you da-da-da. 50 moves later, you have to erase all the irrelevant lines, and you're left with the shape of this crop circle. So we took out that whole sequence there. That's not in the film. But I really, you would have a wonderful experience on his website just seeing that whole kind of sequencing. We don't take you through the 50 steps in the long film either, but we give you at least a flavor of it that we don't give you here. I think we may make mention of it. I think those are the main stories that we took, main chunks that we took out. I think maybe, let me see, get on my mailing list. If you live in LA, be in touch. You're in Philadelphia. Okay, I think maybe I did it all. Okay, and also, okay. I was just going to say that I was really glad to hear somebody talk about time travel because, maybe that's how they get here. So the path has been laid for you to see this movie. So I think now is yeah? Oh, yes, this is the time you're supposed to show it. Yes? We'll be finished with it before the 8 o'clock end time. And if you want to, it's late. I think you guys are all going to want to eat dinner. But if you want to, the movie will be over at like 20 of. And it says on the program till 8 o'clock. And if you want to do any Q&A, I'm here. I'll be happy to do it. So until we meet again, thank you all very much.